This is a heavy strength training day for your menstrual phase. This is one that I would recommend saving for day 3, 4, maybe even 5 of your cycle when you feel energy levels returning and you're through the heaviest flow days. So this isn't one that you want to use when we are trying to promote the downward flow of energy by relaxing the pelvic floor, relaxing the uterus. Instead, this one requires a lot of pelvic floor support. So we'll be toning the pelvic floor. We'll be sort of closing the root lock to help support this lower body work. So it's best reserved for kind of the end of your flow days and the early follicular phase when we're still in low hormone territory and you can still capitalize on your low hormone physiology, but without inhibiting your healthy flow. With that said, in low hormone territory, we can go heavy. We have a lot of things working for us, like quicker recovery. You'll find you're very quickly sweating throughout the workout. So I was already pouring sweat by the time the warm-up was finished. So this is a great one for kind of that cleansing quality that can come with a good sweat session. You will be going heavy during this workout. So a few notes on your weight selection. I have a single heavy 30-pound dumbbell. You can also use a single heavy kettlebell. Maybe you are doubling up 2 dumbbells together to create that heavy load. But if you don't have heavy weights at home, don't sweat it. You can always increase the intensity and the load through volume. What that means for you in this interval structure is that you'll be logging more reps in each interval with the lighter weight. So that does involve picking up the pace. Just make sure that you're maintaining expert form throughout. So your mechanics are the most important thing to create that healthy loading pattern. In today's workout, we have 2 giant circuits and a finisher. The first circuit is 12 minutes long. We're completing rounds of 40 seconds of work and 20 seconds of rest. After that first circuit, we have a minute rest before we get into our second giant circuit. Same format, 12 minutes long, 40 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest. In those 2 circuits, we are combining 2 unique movement patterns. One is symmetrical, where we're loading the legs together. One is asymmetrical, where we are working each side independently. Knowing that, you might want to have a secondary option to lighten the load if you need to for the asymmetrical pattern. You'll see me in the lateral lunge movement. I'll drop down in weight as my form starts to get a bit compromised. With these patterns, you know that you've hit the right weight and rep selection when the last few reps of each round are challenging, and then the last round, so that full last round feels very tough. You're hitting that fatigue state in the muscles. We're working through this performance phase. So the first half of the cycle is all about building muscle tissue, about creating the adaptations and the momentum that you need to carry you through the cycle. The second half, we switch more into preservation mode, where we're maintaining all of the muscle adaptations that we set in motion during the first half of the cycle. So take it at your own pace. It is interval training, insofar as that creates the structure. So that creates the container of our practice, but don't let that rush you. Don't feel urgency with that interval. If you make 8 reps, that's great. If you make 12 reps, that's also fine. So really just let your breath dictate the pace and work to your intuitive edge. So finding that challenge in the last few reps of each interval. This one includes a movement tutorial. We'll start with that, where I will break down every exercise in detail, offering progressions and modifications where appropriate. And that's a great way to kind of try on your weight, see what weight selection you're going to use for today's practice. After that, we start with a pre-exhausted warm-up, a quick 5 minutes to get the legs ready to move. Then we have our 30-minute workout and a very quick cool-down stretch session at the end. It's kind of the bare minimum that you need to walk off your mat and let the muscles cool down. This is a great workout. I'll just mention one more thing to use in a progressive overload fashion. So maybe you're starting day 3 of the cycle and then revisiting this on day 10, kind of in the early follicular phase, maybe even day 17, depending on when your ovulatory phase hits. Each time increasing either the weight or picking up the pace to create more volume. So creating that progressive overload in each subsequent attempt at this workout so that you're increasing the load and the exertion in the muscles to build them back stronger in this opportunity, this low hormone and kind of estrogenic opportunity where we can build muscle tissue. Make sure that you're fueling for your activity. You want some healthy carbs and protein before as well as after. The after may be more important so that you're topping off the tank and giving the muscles something to work with, to go right to work in recovery and repair. So make sure that you're fueling your body accordingly within 30 minutes after this workout. And let's get started. Before we get into our warm-up today, I'm going to run through the different movements that will make up our workout. For today, I'm using a single heavy dumbbell. Lots of different options for how you load these movements. You can use 2 lighter dumbbells. If you're working on increasing your load, you can use 2 heavy dumbbells. I like the goblet hold with the single heavy dumbbell, so that's what I'll be using today. If you have kettlebells, you can use those also. They're great. Again, as always, body weight is an option as well. Our first circuit has a goblet squat as the first exercise. So the goblet squat, we have a pretty narrow stance. So maybe hips width slightly wider. The toes can turn slightly out, heels slightly in. You want the spine to be nice and tall. Draw the tailbone toward the inner heels and close the gap between the low ribs and the hip points. And then lift up through the chest. Keep your stance strong. From here, we're simply lowering down. You can go a little bit past the knees, maybe all the way to the floor, depending on the range that you're working with, and then drive through the heels with a gentle squeeze at the top. So we lower down and then hug the legs as you come up. You can also work on pressing through the feet, maybe dragging them energetically apart to engage more of the inner thighs. That's our goblet squat as the first exercise. We're then alternating a symmetrical pattern with an asymmetrical pattern. So our asymmetrical pattern will be the wall-supported Romanian deadlift with a single leg. This is my new favorite exercise. You're going to start with the legs together, keep the knees together, and then measure the distance to the wall. So you want the wall to be for your shin to be straight across, so horizontal, perpendicular to the wall. So you might have to adjust the position of your standing foot so that you can make that happen. Once you're in position, you want your knees to be in the same plane and you're stacked. So the spine, the heels, the hips, and the shoulders are stacked in a line. And then as you prepare to pick up the weight, press your foot like crazy into the wall. Press your standing foot like crazy into the floor. We'll come down. This movement starts from the top. So we're here, you've got your heavy weight or perhaps even a barbell or 2 dumbbells. And here we're keeping that standing leg pretty straight. Come to about mid-shin or wherever your hip hinge stops. So whenever you start to feel that the end of that range of motion, then drive through the heel to press up. As you lower down, you're pushing both feet into the surfaces and then driving up. So I'll demonstrate without the weight for a moment so that I can talk through a few of the key alignment points here. You want a micro bend in the knee, so it's not locked out, but it stays mostly straight. The key action here is the hip hinge. So you're stretching crown to tail, move as in a single line, and you're stretching forward the whole way down. And once you feel the hip hinge stop, so here I'm no longer hinging, I'm now stretching the hamstring. So you find that range of motion where the hip hinge stops, you're still leaning forward, and then you drive through the heel to come up. We'll go back to the goblet squat after the first side, and then we'll revisit the second side in that asymmetrical pattern. So we'll have 3 rounds of this. So we'll do each exercise twice. That's a single round, and we'll repeat that 3 times. Our second circuit, we start with a kneeling hip thrust. So this is our symmetrical pattern. A couple different ways to approach this. You can bring the big toes to touch and keep the knees wide so that you engage more of the outer glutes, or you can keep the feet and legs parallel and be here. The key here is that you want to press your thighs forward without arching in the back. So crown to tail again, stay in that single axis, that strong axis. And we're coming down and pressing up. Really root down through the shins as you drive up. So loaded, this looks like this. You keep the weight at the chest and press up. Find some power. And then without thrusting too far forward, find that boundary where your thighs are straight up and down and you're engaging the glutes to finish the movement. We're then alternating that symmetrical pattern with a curtsy lunge to a lateral lunge. This one is a bit challenging, so just make sure that you're taking it nice and slow so that you have the mechanics and the form down. We start with our curtsy lunge. So the back leg comes behind the front heel. Keep the legs nice and close, squeeze the inner thighs, and then we step out wide to our lateral lunge. We curtsy. You can have a little pause at the top if you need it to reset, readjust, and curtsy. You'll know this one. It's going to be an intense workout for cardiovascular health as well. You'll find yourself breathing heavy because we are using the biggest muscles in the body with a heavy load. So we'll go back to our kneeling thruster after that, and then switch sides with the curtsy lunge and the lateral lunge. After that second circuit, we have our finishers. So just 2 exercises in the finisher here, starting with the dumbbell pull through. So in this one, the feet are slightly wider than hips width distance, but still a pretty narrow stance. You're going to take the dumbbell, and we're focusing on the hip hinge. So we take the bottom half of the dumbbell, tap it behind you, so behind the heels or level with the heels, and then drive the hips up and forward. Again, not too far forward. You want to find that boundary and hold it there. So we tap down and drive up. Here, if the weights aren't heavy enough, a couple of options to make it more challenging. You can take 2 dumbbells or a heavier kettlebell. You can also make this more of a cable pull through. If you have some resistance bands, you can attach it to a desk or something heavy behind you and then wrap it around the dumbbell to create that extra tension. I've got a 30-pound dumbbell here, so that's what I'm going to stick with for today. And then our last movement will be the weighted hamstring curl. So we'll lower onto the belly with knees bent. Bring the bar of the dumbbell between the inner edges of the feet. Lower down. Here I like to pillow the head on the hands, and we're simply lowering and lifting up, curling it up. So here, make sure the tops of the thighs are pressing down so that the hips are square. You're not externally rotating the hips here. That'll help you focus on the meaty part of the hamstring. And find that working zone and stay in it. So you don't have to squeeze all the way up. You can kind of stop when the knees are bent at 90 and then release. So that one will be our final exercise of the finisher. It's a bit precarious to get in and out, so just be mindful as you're placing the weight in position for that exercise. We'll start with a quick pre-exhaust, we'll end with a very quick cool down, and that will give us a complete workout for today. We'll begin with our pre-exhaust and warm-up. Make sure that you have a resistance band handy if you'd like to use one today. If you don't have a proper resistance band, you can use a headband or a sports bra, anything that's going to give you a bit of resistance around the legs. This one is a quick 5-minute warm-up. I'll get our timer started here, and we'll go in about 10 seconds. So place the band just above the knees here. We're lowering onto the back to start for our glute bridge and abduction. So it's a static glute bridge. We begin here and simply press out and out. This can be fast or slow. I like to make it a bit quick to really kind of fire up the glutes, heat things up before we start to add the heavy load. We're here for just a minute, and then we'll flip onto hands and knees, switching to our donkey kicks. So be here, close that gap between low ribs and hip points, lift the hips maybe a little higher, press through the heels, all the while pulsing out and out. You can make this a little bit slower, more focused if you want to kind of increase the length that the glutes are under tension here. Kind of slowing that down, or again, you can be in the pulse. Either way, you're going to start to feel that heat up and breathe. Use this opportunity and this warm-up to create that stable, steady breath that will support you throughout. Last 3, 2, and 1. Flip over. We're going right into donkey kicks. Here we go. Lift it up and up. We're alternating sides. I like to pulse a double on each side just to really target each side independently. So it's a pulse up and up. You can also do single reps on each side, whatever feels best in your body. Shoulders are over the wrists, hips are over the knees. We're pointing the sole of the foot straight up. And again, the key here is not to arch in the lower back. So can you close that gap between low ribs and hip points so that you're not tempted to take the work out of the glutes by working into the mobility of the lower back? We're here for just a minute. Then we're switching to our hydrant movement pattern. Here we go. This one, we're alternating sides. Same thing, open and close, open and close. You can add a tiny pulse if you like to make it a bit more challenging, to feel more deeply. We're here for another minute, and then we'll come to stand for crab walks. Be with your breath here. Try not to let the hips pop open, but instead focus that work in the glutes. We are in our low hormone phase. So you might start to notice you're sweating already. We have a lower temperature that the body begins to sweat. So you don't have to get as hot before cooling starts to take place. I'm feeling that here already in the warm-up, feeling the heat in the legs. Here we go. Pop up, come to one side of your mat, coming into crab walks. Keep it low. Step out and together, head back the other direction. You got this. Out and together. Feeling those glutes. We're here for another 40 seconds or so, and then we'll switch to our squat with a lateral leg lift. So we're really kind of working the glutes from all angles in this pre-exhaust to warm up and get the legs ready for that heavy load. Last 20 seconds here. You got this. Stay low and breathe. Keep the chest elevated, even in the squat position. And almost there. We have 3, 2, and 1. Now we're squatting down and lifting the leg out to the side. Here we go. Squat down, lateral leg lift. This one can slow down a bit since we're working with single leg balance. So focus on really rooting down through that standing leg, keeping the upper body stable so that you can target the outer glutes here. Almost through our warm-up, and then your legs will be asking for that heavy load. Last 20 seconds here. Breathe. Use these last few moments to create your intention, to set your mind toward how you want this workout to go. Listen to your body. Create that open line of communication so that you can make adjustments as you go. And rest. Drop that band. You can set it off to the side. We won't need it anymore. And we'll get started with our workout now. Now that the legs are warmed up and ready to go, we will get started with our workout. So we're starting with our goblet squats in about 15 seconds. Grab your weight, create your stance so the toes turn slightly out, heels slightly in. Nice and strong through the core. So tailbone gently moving toward the inner heels. We'll go in 3, 2, 1. It's a squat down, drive up through the heels and squeeze the legs together at the top. So you find that engagement at the top of the movement can make all the difference. It adds so much to your workout, to your practice. Keep the chest elevated. We're working through 40-second intervals. And then we have 20 seconds of rest to set up for the next exercise and gather the breath. So in 10 seconds, we're resting, setting up for a single leg Romanian deadlift at the wall. 3, 2, 1. Set your weight up. Bring your feet together. You want your shin to be perpendicular to the wall and the knees to be in the same plane. So set your feet up wherever they need to be. Once you're in position, press both feet. So down and into the wall. We'll go in 3, 2, 1. Let's begin. It's a hip hinge. So you're keeping that standing leg mostly straight. So you're focusing on the posterior chain on that single side. So the leg that is lifted, that is pressing into the wall, really push into the wall. That'll help give you kind of some equal and opposite action so that the muscles are under tension for the entire 40-second interval. Even as you come up and out of the movement pattern, you're still engaging the posterior chain by pressing into the wall and pressing into the floor. 2, 1, and rest. We're switching back to the goblet squat. Remember the leg that you had down on the ground so that you switch after this interval. So we're coming into the goblet squat. Grab that weight. We're going in 5 seconds. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Take it nice and slow. So this need not be rushed. This can be focused, controlled, so that you're moving slowly all the way down and slowly all the way up, feeling the muscles under tension the entire time. So there's not really a point where you can check out, but really you're working for that full 40-second interval. We are in this circuit for 12 minutes. So we're coming to the end of our first round. And after that, we have 2 more, just like that. So we have 6 opportunities rest for the goblet squat, since it's doubled in each round. Switching sides now for that single leg Romanian deadlift. Set yourself up at the wall before you pick up the weight. Push down, push back. Keep that solid. Grab the weight, and let's begin. Lower down about mid-shin. Keep the crown of the head stretching forward. Back of the neck stays long. So resist the urge to gaze forward or to gaze down. Keep it neutral. Keep the shoulder blades pressing onto the back. So you're drawing the shoulders open. Gives you access to your breath and helps take any of that strain out of the low back. The low back will work in this movement pattern no matter how we slice it, but we want to make sure it's not straining to make the movement happen. And rest. Coming to the top of round 2. Second of 3. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm feeling the heat already. We'll go in about 10 seconds. Collect your breath, towel off if you need to. This is one of my favorite ways to welcome the new cycle is to enjoy a heavy leg day when hormones are at their lowest. So you find quicker recovery, maybe a higher pain threshold, so you have more tolerance for the discomfort that you need to create the muscle adaptations. It's a great way to kind of set yourself up for the cycle ahead, for the workouts, for the challenge that you want to find in this first half of the cycle. 3, 2, and 1. We're back to that first side in the Romanian deadlift. So in the first half of the cycle, I like to think of it as the performance phase. We're challenging ourselves. We have sort of later the anabolic hormones working to build muscle tissue. 3, 2, 1. Grab your weight. So the first half is all about putting in the work that will move the needle, putting in the hard work that is going to help you reach your goals. The second half of the cycle, particularly the mid to late luteal phase, I like to shift into preservation mode. So rather than working through kind of personal bests and max effort, we're instead engaging in work that helps us preserve the muscle mass, preserve the adaptations that we set the foundation for in the first half of the cycle. And rest. Coming into our goblet squats. Once again, remember the leg that you were on just now so that you can switch sides in the second half. Going in 5 seconds here. 3, 2, 1. Goblet squat. Drive it down, straight and solid all the way up. Drive it down and back up. I'll demonstrate from the side just so that you can see how the spine stays nice and upright, almost as if you were sliding down a wall. You might have a slight forward lean with the spine, but as best as you can, keeping it nice and tall, nice and upright. Weight is in the heels. Really playing with the subtleties in activation. So what happens when you press the feet apart? What happens when you draw them together? And rest. Switching sides now for that single leg Romanian deadlift. Here we go. Pressing into the wall as hard as you can and down into the floor as hard as you can. Grab your weight. Begin at the top. Let's go. Hinge at the hips. Keep the belly hugging in. So we support the spine through this full range of motion. And again, you're not aiming to touch the floor unless this is a mobility workout for you. If you're working with heavier loads, we're focusing on the hip hinge. So you need not come further than that movement, that full range of movement in the hip hinge. Press both feet, re-engage. So each time I come up, I like to re-establish that press into the floor. So finished on the left side. We're starting at the top of the next round with the goblet squat in 10 seconds. Shake it out, give a little stretch, maybe towel off or grab a sip of water. We're ready for goblet squats. Here we go. 2 and 1. Squat down, press through the heels, drive it up. You got this. Feeling the cumulative effect now. The muscles moving toward fatigue. And that's okay. That's where we want to be in this last round. It should be hard. It should feel challenging. And just like each interval, we want the last few reps to feel challenging. That's how we know we're in the right rep range, we're in the right weight range. If you're not feeling that challenge in the last few reps and rest, you have the option to either change your interval structure so that you get a few more reps, or you can go up in weight. You can also slow down the reps to keep the muscles under tension for a longer period of time. Starting with my right leg here. Let's go in 2, 1. Grab your weight and begin. Press into the wall and into the floor. Keep that straight line in the spine, nice and strong. Use the slowness of the asymmetrical pattern to reconnect to your breath. We're here. The last time on this side, we've got about 12 more seconds. Really push down and back. Feel that activation, that little extra something that gives to you through this movement. Rest. Last round of goblet squats coming up. Going in 10 seconds. Shake it out. Stretch your hips. Stay with it. We got this. 3, 2, 1. Grab your weight. Let's begin. Last round of goblet squats. Make them the best. Keep your mechanics solid form from start to finish. So we breathe in on the way down. Exhale forcefully on the exertion phase. Here we go. Add some sound if you need to. We're here for 15 more seconds. Stay with it. We have one more side of the single leg exercise. And then I maybe didn't mention this, but we have a full minute rest between circuits. Rest here, set up for that final movement. So you have your opposite leg forward, foot to the wall, foot to the ground, pressing firmly. 3, 2, 1. Let's begin. Last round here. Inhale on the way down. Exhale to lift that weight up. Notice where you feel the work. If it starts creeping into your low back, you can drop the weight, or you can shorten the range of motion just a touch. A lot of times, the low back comes in when we get tired, as we start to creep too low or too far at both ends of the motion. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Set your weights down. We have a full minute of rest. So in this rest period, take whatever you need. Maybe you're toweling off. Maybe you're taking small sips of water. For me, after those Romanian deadlifts, feeling the low back a little bit. So just some standing cat-cow here to release the low spine. Really any stretch that feels good for you. Your body will sort of tell you what it needs. So we want to resist the urge to completely stop. Instead, just finding some kind of releasing movement, maybe rotating here to release the low back for the next 30 seconds. 30 more seconds in our rest period here. We are in the menstrual phase, so we're not going back to back to back. We want to have this rest period to allow for that recovery, especially if you're ramping up and kind of coming out of the second half of your previous cycle. Our next circuit involves the kneeling hip thrust with the curtsy lunge to lateral lunge. So we'll begin here in 5 seconds. Grab your weight. Feet are flat, so tops of the feet are flat. And let's begin. We sit down and squeeze up. Down and up. You can get a little bit more range of motion if the knees are wider apart, but just kind of gauge what feels best. So maybe your outer thighs, outer glutes are screaming. You might want to focus more on the quads and keeping the legs closer together. After this, we keep that single dumbbell and we move to the first side of our curtsy lunge with a lateral lunge. Last 3, 2, and 1. Come down. 20 seconds of rest here. So with this one, you can keep a single arm hold if that feels good for you. If it's pretty heavy, then you might want to take the goblet hold like we did in the first circuit. 3, 2, 1. Step behind you, keep the legs close, and then take it wide. Come down. Spine stays straight and strong the whole time. This one, I like to slow it down. It's our asymmetrical pattern, so really take your time. Feel the alignment as you sit back into that bent knee, hip. 15 more seconds here. And then we're coming back to the kneeling thruster, kneeling hip thrust. This one will start to get spicy very quickly and rest. So if you need to, you might grab a lighter weight for just that curtsy and the lateral lunge. It's targeting smaller muscle groups in the legs, so it can be challenging to keep that same weight. We're going in 5 with the kneeling hip thrust. Here we go. 2, 1. Take it up and back. Up and back. If it's too much to hold the heavy weight at the collarbones, maybe you have some discomfort there, you can always take it behind on the meaty part of the shoulder and create that nice ledge, nice resting point for the heavy weight. Squeeze the legs together at the top. You got this. This is strength training for the low hormone phase. So we are sweating, we are moving. You'll even get a bit of a workout for the lungs. Rest, come down. Just by virtue of using those bigger muscle groups. So we're switching sides now, starting with the curtsy on the other side to a lateral lunge. Going in 5. Grab your weight, get ready. Let's begin. Step it behind and take it wide. Nice and slow. I'm looking around the room here, trying to find my lighter weight. I might be switching as we move into the second and third round. And by all means, if you find that you're struggling in just the first few reps of the interval, which is where I'm at right now, then you want to go down in weight or slow it down enough that you don't hit the struggle until the end of the interval. So we're coming into the top of our second round. Again, there's 3 rounds of this one, alternating between that symmetrical pattern and the asymmetrical pattern. Grab your weight, get it into position, and let's go. Lower down, squeeze up. We got it. Lower down and squeeze up. Use your breath. Find it if you've lost it. Inhale on the way down. Forceful exhale on the way up. If you're working with lighter weights, you might be squeezing more reps into every interval. So you might be moving more quickly than I am. If you're working with heavy weights, maybe you're moving even slower and really focusing the control in each rep. Here we go, and rest. Release that weight down, coming into the curtsy lunge with that lateral lunge. In about 10 seconds, shake it out. With the heavier weight, sometimes your forearms, your grip gets a bit sore. So stretching that out here. And let's begin. Curtsy lunge to a lateral lunge. I forgot to drop my weight. So I'll take it nice and slow. So this one, the lateral lunges are what get me. We're increasing the lever arm. We're targeting the inner thighs. Just brings a new level of challenge at the same weight selection. So you can always create that pause at the top so that you can set up each phase of the movement. Here we go. Last 2 and 1. Set that weight down. Come to kneeling. Get ready for the kneeling hip thrust. Coming into the second half of the second round. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Lower down. Press it up. Keep the back of the neck long, not arching in the low back as you come down. So you have that slight posterior pelvic tilt. So that just means we're shifting the tailbone toward the inner knees as you come up, and then reversing that. So shining the sitting bones back as you lower down. So imagine the bowl of the pelvis tipping forward and tipping slightly back. Not extreme in either direction, just enough to mobilize the hips and facilitate the thrust. Here we go. Drop those weights. Coming into the last exercise of our second round. Just one more round after that, and we'll switch to our finisher. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's begin. Curtsy lunge to lateral lunge. Nice and slow, adding that pause if and when you need it. So you can always step the feet together, split back behind, together, step it out. Focusing on the breath here. I know for myself, when it gets challenging, you might find less talking and more breathing. We're almost there. And rest. Coming into the top of the third and final round. I'm going to grab my 20-pound weight so that it's ready. Going in about 10 seconds for the kneeling hip thrust. We got this. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Lower down, press it up. We just have 2 more sets of these with that curtsy and lateral lunge in between. So this work is no joke. We're keeping it simple, but it builds. So in this last round, you should start to feel that challenge, that shift toward muscle fatigue. That means you're hitting the right weight, the right reps. Almost there. 3 and 1. Drop that weight. Coming into curtsy with a lateral lunge. I'm going to switch down to my lighter weight so that I can keep good form. I'm going to stay with the goblet hold here. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. It's curtsy, lateral lunge. Much better, much more sustainable. Not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely something where I can find the full range of motion and I'm not having to wiggle out of that lateral lunge. So with the heavier weight, sometimes you have to squirm or shimmy and shake to get out of it. That's an indication that either you've hit your rep limit or the weight is just a bit too heavy. So you can still eke out another rep, but it's not with the best form. And rest. Coming into our kneeling hip thrust. Last round of these before we come to the finisher. 5 seconds here. And let's begin. I'm keeping the weight in front now because that last set was a little bit hard to take the weight off my back between the sweaty palms and shoulders and the heavy weight. It's safer for me to keep the weight in front. So do what you need to do. Find what works for you. We are coming so close to the end. You're almost there. You put in the work. Let's finish it out. Last 3, 2, and 1. Rest. I'm going to grab my lighter weight for the curtsy and lateral lunge. Going in about 10 seconds. And then our finisher is just 4 minutes long. It's a quick one. We'll go in 3, 2, 1. Curtsy lunge to a lateral lunge. You got this. Step it back behind, nice and close, and then take it wide. So bringing that knee to the outside of the front heel, and then stepping it as wide as you can. On this side, kind of my non-dominant side, even the 20 pounds feels heavy. So it would have been very challenging to finish this workout with the 30 pounds here. So being okay with those adjustments, feeling empowered to make those switches. We are coming into our 1 minute rest. So grab your heavy weight, shake it off, towel off, grab some water, take what you need for the next 60 seconds. Maybe stretching the spine here and letting your breath slow down. So the key with this longer rest is that we come from that elevated heart rate back to something that is a bit more neutral. Twisting here, maybe rounding the back, pressing down into the thighs. We'll get a good stretch for the legs at the very end, but here we're just trying to keep and maintain that fluid spine so that you don't feel any tension in the low back. Maybe even find a bit of a side bend here. You've been working the core, whether you like it or not, throughout this entire workout to stabilize the movement. We're going into our pull throughs in about 10 seconds. Make sure that your hands are nice and dry. Mine are sweaty and slippery. We'll go in 3, 2, 1. Remember, reach it back, hip hinge, and drive it forward. Fold, hinge at the hips, and drive it forward. So the knees are staying mostly straight. There's a micro bend just to protect the low back and the knee joints, but we're keeping that hip hinge motion. So it's not a squat, it's a hip hinge. We're leaning forward, crown to tail, moving as a unit. You'll know when you hit the right zone, when you feel the hamstrings and the posterior chain awaken. Here we go, 10 more seconds. We're almost there. This is our finisher. Just 2 rounds. 3, 2, and 1. Set that weight down. We're going to lower onto the knees. Squeeze the weight between the inner edges of the feet. Let the knees come together so they're nice and close. And then stamp the tops of the thighs and the hip points into the mat. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Lower down and squeeze it up. Press the hip bones into the mat and squeeze it up. Here we go. We're just here. We have 2 sets of these, so make them count. These should feel challenging. You want to be targeting the meaty part of the hamstring here. So that involves keeping the torso pressing into the mat so it's stable, and then the movement happens just in the lower legs. So tops of the thighs rooting down, hip bones rooting down. That keeps it out of the lower back and really allows you to target the hamstrings, which is what we're going for. Set that weight down, slowly come up. Our last round now of the pull through. So this is where you'll start to feel it count. You'll know when you're in the right range of motion when you feel the hamstrings awaken. So if you're in more of the squat, you won't feel the hamstrings as much. If you're in that hip hinge, that's where you know it is. Here we go. Begin. 40 seconds. It's that hip hinge. So we're not bending the knees too deeply, but we're driving through the heels and finding that boundary as you straighten the legs, creating some power in that hip hinge. This is such a strong movement pattern that a lot of us have trouble accessing. It's there for us. We have the strength, but maybe the mechanics are just a little bit hard to master. So use this pattern to find the hip hinge movement. And rest. Last one here, last exercise. Set that weight down, come onto your belly. We're almost there. Squeeze that weight between the inner edges of the feet and then come down. Hug the knees into the midline. Press your thighs and hips into the mat. Here we go. Lower it down and lift up. Try not to rest the weight at the bottom of the movement, but keep the muscles under tension the whole way up, the whole way down. So that means not coming into full flexion in the knees, but stopping just short at the top. So about 90 degrees, maybe a little less. Feeling that work. We're almost there. The legs probably talking to you here. Last few reps and rest. Maybe 1 rep. Here we go. Come on up. So mindfully, slowly come up. Just enjoy this 20-second rest period to kind of take your body out of the high intensity and shift into cool down mode. So we're moving into our cool down next. It is the bare minimum that I would recommend for stretching the lower body and taking you on your way. But if you have more time to cool down, by all means, give yourself that extra recovery period. So we'll begin our cooling movement now. Coming into our very quick cool down now, we'll begin with a quad stretch. So if you have a wall or a chair for support, you can take that on the left side. Begin to bend your right knee, hug the heel into sitting bone. You might find that the knee wants to pop out. Can you squeeze it into the midline? Square hips and shoulders, draw the heel toward the sitting bone, and then curl the tail ever so slightly under until you feel the stretch in the quad. Broaden the shoulders apart. You might even take that foot in both hands to create some space across the chest. So this is our recovery movement, just a gentle stretch. You might find in the low hormone phases that your recovery happens more quickly. Switching sides now. So you are at your kind of peak exertion, peak effort, and then it's easier to come back to the baseline. The body returns more quickly. That's the mechanism of recovery happening when there's less hormone interference. So we can take advantage of that to move through these intense workouts and allow the body to kind of put in motion the adaptations that you're looking to create for this cycle. Stretching here, that gentle curl of the tailbone. Excellent work. And then we'll come into our hamstring stretch. So keep the right foot planted, squeeze the knees together so they're in the same plane. Keep that and then just extend your left heel out long. You can bring your hands onto your right thigh, hug the left toes toward the shin, stretch the heart forward. Imagine you're trying to connect your heart to your big toe. You might even reach the arms forward, out and back, really kind of releasing the upper body, depending on what you used for your weights. Maybe you had too heavy dumbbells. You might be experiencing some of that grip fatigue here. So really just allowing whatever your body needs in this moment. Switching sides now, right foot forward, hands to the left thigh. Again, maybe kind of circling one arm and then the other, just creating some fluidity in the shoulders so that you don't have any tension in the neck and shoulders as you walk off your mat. That can happen sometimes with really heavy leg workouts, particularly when we're using dumbbells, which is often what we have at home. So we're making use of what we have. Come up, shake it out. If you have a wall or a chair, you can use it for this next stretch. We're coming into a seated figure 4. So crossing right ankle over left. You can use your hand to press the inner thigh down and away from you. Flex the foot. Working into kind of the outer glutes here. You might even lean a bit forward to stretch the low back. And switching sides. We really hit the legs from all angles today. So just showing them some love. Last big stretch here. And then we'll slowly come out. Step the feet nice and wide. And so long as your heart rate has come back down to kind of that neutral place, we'll reach up and fold forward. So as you're ready, exhale, fold over the legs. Weight is forward in the ball mounds of the feet. I like to still keep the head level with the heart after that kind of intense work that we did today. Left hand stays grounded. Stretch the right arm open, twist, release the upper back here. Switching sides, right hand down, left arm twists open. Squaring the hips, reaching the hip creases up skyward. And back down. Bend into your right knee, come into a lateral lunge, but nice and deep. So lift the left toes if you can. We did a lot of work with the inner thighs, so just kind of creating some length there, some space. Crawling over to the other side now, stretching the opposite side. Maybe even leaning out of that right hip crease a bit to stretch the lower back. Kind of just explore. Let this be your laboratory. Where does your body need that attention? And then we're coming up and out. Transition to the short side of your mat. Coming into a tabletop for just one final stretch. As I mentioned, if you had your dumbbells in both hands, you might have experienced some grip fatigue. And that often comes when the forearms get overworked or tired. So bring the fingers to face your knees, the forearms and wrists facing away from you. We'll just enjoy cat and cow here to release the forearms. Inhale, soften the belly, stretch the spine, gaze up. And as you exhale, coil through the belly, round in, chin to chest. Press through the heels of the hands. Inhale, open it up. And exhale, let it go. Last one like this. Inhale, open. And exhale, release. Slowly switch the grip, shake out your wrists. And as you're ready, come up to a standing position. We'll enjoy one big breath together. Inhale. And exhale, sigh it out. You have crushed this workout for today. I want to thank you so much for showing up, for sweating, for putting in the work, and being a part of this collective of women who move by the moon. It helps all of us show up to create that empowered feeling, that potential that we all have inside that we can access through our cycle. So thank you for being here and for letting your body be moved.